Hi everybody, I hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm very excited because I don't remember when it was. Was it 2 years ago, Eric? Three? Eric gave me the 3 fingers, which is the international sign for 3 years ago. And we demoed Baby Audio's I Heart New York, I think it was I Heart New York, and it had the heart. It was a great kind of parallel compressor because what you could do is you could like destroy the sound and blend it back in. And the thing that was unique about it, and what is unique about their stuff, is it's not like how can I best describe it? It's not like the perfect, ultra clinical, transparent, as people used to say back in the 80s, it's a transparent compressor. No, it was incredibly colored. In fact, it had a lot of characteristics of a DBX 163. Do any of you remember the DBX 163? Eric at this moment does have a photo of the 163, don't you, Eric? It's here.
Oh, yeah, it's right there.
There it is. So it was the slider compressor, and I think it had the same VCA that goes in like a 160 VU or a 165, or even the same VCA that, believe it or not, is an SSL 4000 bus compressor. But the way it worked is it had this thing, I think it was called Over Easy. Do you guys and girls remember that? And what was great about it is you could abuse the schnizzle out of it. You could really make it do some really crazy things. You could put it on a sound source like a piano and have it do that ridiculous attack thing, an aggressive compression like ping, ping, like this explosive silliness. And it became such a fun compressor to use in the studio. On room mics, I wanted it to be like really crushed, but with exaggerated, crazy going, transients, and you could do things like the cymbals would kind of just go washing, and you blend that underneath and it would give you this amazing energy. So I really fell in love with that plugin, the I Heart New York. And so like I said, Eric just said, 3 years ago, we reviewed it. I'm sure there'll be a link down here. But what they have done is they now have an IHNY2. They've got a new version of it. So I thought I'd try it out. And I think have they given us 3 copies to give away? Yes, I got the international sign for 3 copies and with a thumbs up. So yes, they've given us 3 copies to give away. Also, we're going to have the great Matt Lange and the rather wonderful Paul Third. We all know Paul Third because he'll put plugins through the ringer, as we know. And Matt, of course, is an incredible remixer and producer and songwriter in his own right. If you check out his stuff on Spotify, he's got some pretty huge songs. He also just did an album with Jake Bowen from Periphery, so he knows his schnizzle. And not forgetting the rather wonderful Adam Steele in Reaper. So you get 4 of us. So let's see what we can do. Now, this is actually not even a mix. This is Eric quickly pulling it up because we originally mixed this hybrid through the console. So this is just the tracks without them going through the console. So there's plugins on there, but it's not going to be quite the same as when it went through the SSL. But I like a challenge. This is going to be a fun one for us to like mix. So it's kind of an indie bass line. It's a fun track to mix. So let's see what we can do. The first thing I was thinking is the drums. The drums get absolutely massive. There's so many elements here. It's going to drive you absolutely insane. You can choose to use them all or some of them or whatever the schnizzle you want. But here is all the drums in the chorus. What I think we can do is, because I have some loops going on here, have a listen to this loop. God bless the 80s. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take those elements and have them go to a bus? So we have those elements going to a bus. There's the original I Heart New York, and here is the IHNY2, I Heart New York 2. Now, so here's the auto gain, and you can adjust the percentage by bypass. Of course, you can resize it. So we've got a wet control, dry control, so I can go all the way up to here. And there's the dry. I can adjust the auto gain. Pretty accurate. So I can mess how strong I want it to be. So I've got a mount, 100, wet 100. Oh yeah! This is what the 163 used to do. I rest my case. Finished, demo done. I mean, seriously. So those you remember the 163, it just used to do, remember I was talking about, I haven't tried this yet. Remember I was going, well, you know, I've been hearing this, it reminds you of the 163. It just used to do these really fun things. You'd put them on like room mics and you get this kind of stuff. And it's doing it. Obviously I'm 100% wet, maximum. But listen to how cool that is. Before. After. So if I put that in with the rest of the drum sounds, I'll take it on and off and see how it's going to start cutting across. And bring the output up. Bypass it. And put it on. Off. On. So the strength of it, if we go over here, it says central glow metering. The yellow glow in the center of the XY pad is the meter. It shows the compression impact and your signal strength at the same time. The gradient color expands outward to show you the signal output level, where the circle expand inwards to show you the amount of compression gain reduction in real time. Bypass. Early this morning, we do our Feedback Friday. We do about 3 hours every Friday inside the Academy, and we listen to people's mixes and stuff like that. And one of the mixes there, I think it was Danielle, am I right, had probably one of the best snare sounds I've heard in forever. Yeah, Eric's nodding. And it had that ka, ka, ka. It obviously blended in a really, really aggressive transient in with the original sound, which is what this is doing. So look, that's totally dumb, but it worked. Bypass again. Try something a bit more subtle. It's interesting. The drum part is a little flammy, but as soon as the exaggeration of the transient comes in, it makes it feel more in time. That's crazy. Yeah, anyway, I love it. So that's the quick dumb version of it. Let's try it on something else. Now that, I mean, that's it. That's exactly what I wanted to do. It sounds exactly like the 163 of old. I don't think it necessarily is the 163, but that's what it always reminded me of. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one on this guitar. I love how it's exaggerating that transient. Take it off. Put it back on. Adjusting the auto gain. So I'm now going to put that on each one of these individual guitars just to exaggerate the transients. That's insanely exaggerated, far too much, but might really help with it punching through. I mean, that's really, really insane and totally over the top. But you can see what is so great about a plugin like this. And that's the characteristic that I would always associate with the 163. Now, it can do more. Not just make everything sound exciting and explode out with incredible transients. See what else it can do. So here I've got the electric guitar. So I'm bussing the two together. So let's grab this and let's have some fun with this. Let's see if we can exaggerate the transients and then do some more subtle stuff. So we've done it dumb. I've used it dumb. Now let's add the tweak. Now this, I like this. So these are all tools. This is the most straightforward looking controls ever. You know how I feel about classic compressors? I've got SSL ones, I've got Neve ones, I've got API, I've got DBX, I've got Tegeler, well, you name it, I've got it. We've got the Altec, the classic, Altec that the Beatles use. We have one of those. We have Crown. We have Ampex ones that are built in. Anyway, we have a lot of different compressors, and we love them all. But I always say to people, wouldn't it just be nice if a compressor was designed for somebody who'd never used a traditional compressor, that was more straightforward and easily understood, that also didn't have a dogma of being associated to a certain piece of equipment? We love it, but why would you pay like $100 for a compressor that just sounds like one compressor? Shouldn't we be moving into an area of all the flexibility offered by all of these different kinds of compressors was in one? And this to me sounds really like they've done it. Look at the attack adjustment here. Look at the release adjustment here. So what does that mean? So the attack time, you can adjust it. How fast does it come in? How quickly does it release? So let's tweak it. So here at the moment, it is right in the middle. It's like 50% wet, 50% dry. So 50% the compressor, 50% not. Listen where I take the attack here and move it all the way to the left. So it's got a 1 millisecond attack. What does that mean? That means it's going to compress quicker than you can hear it compress. It's going right in there. But then when I bring it back, it's designing the transient. It is essentially a transient designer. We've got a very aggressive, very pokey sound, one that's very snappy. And I can exaggerate that by slowing down the attack and letting more sound come through. And then when the compression comes in, it grabs it and you get that pat, 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 pat. But when I go to the left and shorten the attack time, it will do the opposite. Let's go left. Lengthen the attack time, more transient. Now if I really exaggerate it, so now I have a slower attack time. There's more transient going through, but the release time's pretty fast, so it's releasing before the next transient comes in. And now if I really exaggerate the amount of effect, I can get it super aggressive. It's the quickest release time. 5 milliseconds, that's quick. Slow it down. Bypass. Split the difference on the release. Now I'm going to bring it down because it's a parallel compressor, because it's got wet and dry knob on it, just one of the best things that plugins brought in was a wet and dry function. Now they're putting in hardware, which is fantastic. So I'm going to bring this back in. So it's not quite as affected. That's off, on, but it's just exaggerating that attack just enough. Really great. Now this next one here is the ratio. So at the moment it's 1:12, which is quite aggressive. It's not quite limiting. Well, it depends. Some people would call that limiting. I've heard 10. People say 10 is limiting. So the way the ratio works, when it says 1:12, what it means is for 1 dB to go over, where you set the threshold, it has to be 12 dB louder. So it's basically reducing it by 11 dB, which is pretty crazy. If I go 20, one to 2, barely doing anything. Really nice. Now this punch control, I don't know. Let's have a listen. Oh, wow. This really is shaping the transient. That'd be nice to hear on a vocal in a minute. Harmonics. I don't know. Let's hear it. Superb on a guitar. It sounded like there's more harmonic content. Basically, a bit more saturation going on with that on. That's fantastic. Shape. I like what it's doing. Let's go and read it. So, punch is hard compression tends to mess up transients in the signal. Its parameter changes the transient response of the signal to emphasize the attack stage. Nice on the punch. The harmonics adds harmonic saturation. That's what we're hearing, at the rate being determined by the current gain reduction. Now, shape is a classic smiley EQ. Without it, the IHNY2 is just a parallel compressor. But when you add the shape parameter, it lives up to its name, the predecessor, by giving you a classic New York compression sound, a combination compression with equalization. So let's see what the EQ does. Oh, yeah. So like that, you hear a lot more thickness and hype top. Just get rid of it. Hear the thump. Bop, 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 bop. Not there. Exaggerate. Bypass. You see what I mean? When you've got compressors with like tons of knobs on them and all this kind of stuff, and people are like, what does this do? And everybody has a different way of doing things. Like an 1176 is backwards. Like the smaller numbers are actually the longer time, and the larger numbers are the shorter time, and it always confuses people. The fast and slow times seem to be reversed. Everybody has a different nomenclature. They have a different way of doing things. I said to them when I saw this, I was like, if you might have perfected it, and this could be something that could be used across multiple different things. I mean, just that alone, showing you that it's boosting the top and the bottom and shaping it is fantastic. So let's check out the tilt EQ. It says this is essentially a tilt EQ at 600 Hertz that boosts everything on one side while attenuating everything on the other. Interesting. That could be really good for stereo guitars when you've got two guitars playing and you just want to, maybe not as exaggerated as I did, and you might have two rhythm parts and you just want to kind of make them feel slightly different to each other so there's more width. Great. Low preserve 20 Hertz. Oh, okay. Fantastic. We'll try this on a bass. So what this is going to do, it's going to allow low end to come through and not be compressed. So you can go, how far does it go up? 180... 500. Oh, and high preserve. Oh, wow. So it's like a high and low pass, like shelving that allows the low end to breathe so it doesn't hit the compressor. What happens quite often with like bass guitar sounds is you get the low end hits the compressor, and that's fine if you want a nice even across the full range, but you might actually want to exaggerate the low end. So quite often on sidechain compressors, I'll come into about 150 or 200 and have the compressor like listen to that on the compression, allowing the low end to breathe. So it's not only being triggered by big bass notes. That's pretty awesome. I mean, we can try it on this sound. Oh, wow. It's definitely good with the low end. It's really good. Okay, but let's put this on the bass guitar. I'm really excited to hear it on bass. Get the tweak. Bypass it. This is before it's compressing, totally off. On. It's now low preserve. Low preserve. Let's go to like, I got smiley face. So I'm shaping it, EQing the low lows, letting 230 and below pass through, bypass, back on. And that's the harmonics. Because, you know, it's not distorted enough, the bass tone. Put some drums in. Turn it off. Back on. Put the sub bass in. Synth. Guitars. Those guitars are really exaggerated, the transient. I got a little nuts on there, but so I'm just going to bring that down a bit, make it just a little bit drier, and then copy that down to the other guitars. I went a little nutty on that, but you could really hear the transient work. But loving this, absolutely loving it. That tweet function is so straightforward. Anybody can understand it. If I can understand it, you can understand it. I love it. Now, this is not a compressor, I think, that is designed for subtlety and gently compressing. This is a compressor designed for action. We have been big fans of Baby Audio since the beginning because they're just making really simple, easy to understand plugins. And I think it's quite universal. I think most people reviewing their products have been saying that they're designed for a future mindset, that they're not, you know, dogma is such a negative word because I love vintage equipment. I'm surrounded by it and I dig it. I love it. But I also really strongly believe that if you're a 15-year-old kid, 13-year-old, somebody making music for the first time, do you really have to know all of the 55 different compressors that came before? Or do you need to know the techniques and have all of the features like saturation and EQ built in and an attack and release that's easy to understand and see and displayed? Isn't that, you know, a sidechain function where you can low pass and high pass? All of those things should be at your fingertips and easy to use rather than just having a compressor from 1960 that has two knobs on it. You know, don't get me wrong. I like those compressors, but this is the future. This is really wonderful. Thank you, Baby Audio. So let's go over to Matt Lange. And then after Matt Lange, we'll have some Paul Third. Rounded up nicely with Mr. Adam Steele at the end there using Reaper. So stay tuned for Matt Lange.
Hey folks, Matt Lange here, and I'm checking out IHNY2 by Baby Audio. And as a New Yorker, I do, in fact, heart New York very much. So let's check out this plugin, which is, of course, based on New York-style parallel compression. And obviously, I'm going to put it on drums first. This is just the obvious thing because we love parallel compressed drums as native New Yorkers. We like it as much as we like bagels and pizza. That is not universally true, but it's fun to think about. And I really like thinking about pizza and bagels, and now I'm hungry and I want bagels. Anyway, so this is the GUI. And it's nice and resizable, which is really wonderful. And you've got this tweak panel, which I had open, but it's pretty simple. You just have this XY axis. This is your main controlling area. And going up and down, this is going to be your wet and your dry. And left to right is the amount of compression. And if we go open the tweak panel, then we have controls over the attack and release times of the compressor, the ratio, punch parameter, a distortion harmonics parameter, shape, which is basically creating a big smiley face, EQ, scoop the mids, boost the highs and the bass, and a tilt, which is a tilt EQ into the side chain of the compressor, and then a low preserve and high preserve. And I believe what those do is that actually lets the lows or the highs, depending on what you select, through the signal. So you're compressing them while also allowing some of the dry in there too. So you're not necessarily losing lows or highs, depending on what you choose, as you compress something really hard. So let's start it, and let's close this area here. And here's my drum bus, and this is with 0 compression. So if we move it, still 100% dry, but there's the maximum amount of compression. And let's bring it up. So that is the compressed signal entirely. And let's open the tweak panel. Let's see how we can mess this up a bit more. The ratio is 1 to 16. Let's make it harder. Let's see how hard we can go. All right, we can go to 20. Here's the attack, the release. We can get to distort. And I always found the trick with parallel compression in general, at least my taste, is you obliterate the signal first and then you bring it back. So you can do more subtle compression, and you actually could use this as just a straight compressor if you really chose to. But I want to just blow the thing out and then mix it back in. So let's play with the harmonics too. So that goes far. You can really distort it. So just for fun, check this out. Bypass it. So it's doing a lot. I wouldn't do that personally. Maybe let's go back to fully wet. Just easier to hear things. They have a solo button here, so you could just be doing that. But I don't know why I like doing things the hard way sometimes. So that's why I'm doing it like that. Right about there. And then here's our shape, our big smiley. So do we want to be completely unemotional with 0 shape, or all the shape and super smile? Let's do that. And let's play with the tilt a bit. Sounds pretty good. See, now you can hear the lows being really compressed. But that brings the kick back. But it's fine, and you can hear that there's something funny in there. Some kind of signal that's getting totally compressed now and makes a little squeal. So let's now mix that crazy signal in with the original. Bypass. Engaged. So it adds a lot of energy. It really just works very efficiently, and I totally would have used this on this track had I had that back then. So killer on drums, as expected. Let's try it on bass guitar. Here's some bass guitar without any of the IHNY2. All right, and with I Heart New York, the number 2. So let's solo it. So you can hear there's some harmonics in there. It's nice, right? We could probably do a quicker attack, maybe. Yeah, I think that sounds nice. This could get mixed in anyway. Nope. I think we like the Uber smile. And slightly lower ratio this time. And could bring that back in, and ooh, that's a lot. So let's keep it. Unsolo it. And we'll just mix it in. Sounds pretty good to me. Here's without it. With it. So maybe we add some of the low preserve back in. Just to make up for that low end that we lost. Maybe boost it up a bit. It's definitely fatter now. And now with our drums. Sounds great. And let's try it on a synthetic bass too. So we're just going to put it on here. And here is our I Heart noise. And we're going to do a similar thing as last time. That's the bass. No compression. So let's solo it. It's a pretty nice drive, to be honest. You can just use this as a drive effect, which I'm likely going to do, because you can really abuse compression with this thing. I mean, it's fun. And just brick wall the hell out of it. So you have 1 to 20. There's our low preserve. And let's definitely tilt this more towards the bass. Yep. That sounds nice. Maybe get a little bit of distortion from the release. And now mix that in. Very different. And you can totally automate this for sound design too. It's cool. Nice. So this is the setting I'm going to leave it at. It sounds really good. And before, this made it a lot more rude. And they really say New Yorkers are rude, at least here in California. And it's a lie. New Yorkers aren't rude. We're actually wonderful people. Californians are just wimps. I said it. Okay, let's check it out finally on some acoustic guitars. And these are some like finger-picked, plucked acoustic guitars. These are the guitars themselves, and this is on the overall bus. And let's bypass my I Heart New York. All right, that's what I wanted. And you can see that is bringing up all that reverb. So it's pretty fun because, yeah, I put it after I have a reverb here directly on the channel. And just for fun, check this out. That's the compressor just working on the tail of the reverb, because without it, nothing. But this, that's awesome. I mean, even if we played it at, you know, half the sample rate. Sounds so good. I mean, actually, let's even just, let's do a little freeze with the black hole into IHNY2. Let's tweak it, crunch it more. Sick. This thing is really brutal in a wonderful, wonderful way. Oh, listen to that. Honestly, why even bother to try being polite with it when you can just totally destroy signals like that? That sounds awesome. I mean, for the sake of it, let's just go back to a factory default setting. And we'll be boring. And it's like, yes, okay, here's our guitar. Let's compress it. It worked. It was way more fun though when we were just like brutalizing it. So let's just do that one more time. So how do we do that? We're gonna take this black hole. Let's make it 100% wet. Harmonics. Freeze. Oh yeah. I heart IHNY2, and I heart this plugin. Oh yes. Yes, I do.
Hello everyone, my name is Paul Third, and I am going to get into the geeky stuff. I know somebody's got to do it, somebody's got to do the boring stuff, and as we all know, that's my kind of role here on YouTube. So let's get all the boring stuff out the way. So this is the IHNY version 2 in Plugin Doctor. So as you can see, it is completely flat, okay? I've got it set up in a way where it's completely flat. Now, by default, right, what you're going to notice is that the shape, right, if I default this back, this is the way that the IHNY compressor defaults, okay? So this here is your shape, and the shape is essentially just an EQ. And the reason for this is apparently this is part of the New York compression technique, which is EQ in combination with compression. Now, as you can see, you can make the smiley curve really, really big, or you could actually have it so the compressor is completely flat. But how about we just have it on its default setting, which is 33%. Now, what you'll notice here is there's a tilt function. Now, the tilt function isn't an EQ, it's for the sidechain detection, okay? So as you can see, it doesn't affect the linear frequency response. Now, to show you this better, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the audio into the fundamental sweep of Doctor, which is the audio post-processing, so after compression. So that there is what the compression as it is has done to our audio. Now, if I tilt this, so there's more high end, what you're going to notice that as the sweep kind of runs through and does its thing from like 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz, what you're going to notice is that the detection of the compressor isn't affecting the highs as much. So as you can see, you're letting more high end into the signal. And then when we go to the very start of it, as the sweep comes round again, you're going to notice that there is less low end and more high end. Now, if we do the opposite, what you're going to notice is, there you go, that the low end is now not being compressed as much and the high end is being compressed more. So as you can see, look, there you have your high end dip. So the tilt function is essentially just a kind of sidechain detector for the compressor. So instead of doing what this is here, which is essentially your high pass and low pass filter detection, you could use a tilt. Okay. Now, if we take that off, what you're going to notice here is that essentially this does the same as that, but it's not a tilt. So you could be a little bit more exact in regards to your compression. You have more control. So if I decide that I want there to be less low end compressed, then I could simply just take that out of the detection. And as you can see there, look, there is all of the low end. And there you can see the rest of it is being compressed. Now, if I could do the same, see if I can catch it in the sweep. As you can see there, look. So this section here is the only section that's being compressed. And if I bring in the low end back, as you're going to see here, when the sweep comes round again, you're going to notice that the low end is now compressed. As you can see, look, the high end isn't being affected by the compression. However, if I duck that back down again, then that's being compressed. Now, in terms of this little punch function here, the best way to show you this is via the dynamic section in Doctor, right? So this is the attack and release. Now, look what happens. This is, so the punch is on 0. Look what happens when I raise the punch. As you can see, look, you have more of that transient coming through. And in their kind of manual, that's kind of really all that they state that the punch function is. It's just allowing more transient into the signal. So as you can see there, look, less punch, less transient, more punch, more transient. And when you bring that down, again, look, there's your wet and dry, look. So there's it completely dry, no compression. So as you can see, the XY pad is actually doing its thing. Now, to better show you exactly kind of how I have been using this punch function, I actually found that this works incredibly well on a snare drum. What I found is that if you kind of just dial in the punch just enough where you're bringing enough transient, you actually get this really nice snap. And it was just in the default attack and release settings. And it has this really nice snap. I didn't touch anything else. Just kind of increased the punch and then kind of brought it in parallel, obviously, using the XY pad. And what I'm going to show you is a technique where I increase transient energy into a clipper. So like how many people would kind of push into compression, I push into clippers. So I push transients into clippers. So I get more perceived loudness without it really affecting the overall limiting. So the limiter essentially doesn't work as hard. Now just listen to how much punch and snap this is added to the snare and how I've pushed into the clipper. And actually, when you measure it on the meters, it actually measures slightly quieter than the original. So the original has this nice kind of beefy, kind of low weight to the snare, but it is missing a little bit of like a high-end snap to kind of pop through the mix. So just listen to how I've used the IHNY compressor to do this. Now, I use vocal parallel compression quite a lot. Now, I normally use an 1176 kind of slow attack with a very fast release, just to kind of get that grit without sounding too harsh. I mix my vocals very clean and then use a parallel 1176 to add in that grit to taste, all right? So what I've done is I've reduced the ratio to 8.1, and then I have created a slower attack with a really, really fast release. Now, the interesting thing with the harmonics is, as I'll show you here, right? Now, by the way, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, look at all that aliasing, right? That's because I've got the wet so high in the mix, right? If I bring the wet kind of down, let's have it around here, okay? So what you're going to notice here, right, is if I bring up the harmonics, there you go, we have lots of aliasing. Crap, right? But thankfully, Baby Audio have actually listened. They've listened to a lot of the things that I mentioned in their tape release. Now, times 2 oversampling, there you go, brings that down. People could say, right, that's still audible. Times 4 oversampling. Yes, there we go. Look at that. Minus 105 dB, minus 81.9 dB. Practically, that's going to be inaudible, okay? And look, that's with the harmonics at 100%. If I bring down the harmonics, let's 76, 71, let's 60 odd. Look, the aliasing is now completely inaudible, where obviously if you don't use the oversampling, it's going to be audible, but Baby Audio have done the right thing, in my opinion, and brought this in, and that's a great, great addition. Now, interestingly enough, right, as you're going to see from the Hammerstein, right, if we bring down the harmonics, okay, what you're going to notice is that just kind of off the bat, this plugin creates a crap ton of low order harmonics. So it's almost very transformer based, okay? As we can see, what's that? That is odd harmonics. So that's where even harmonic. Yeah, so it's adding in some 3rd and 5th order harmonics. So it's adding in some odd order harmonics. Now, when you increase the harmonics, the high end information of those 2 odd order harmonics increases. So if we bring it down, very weighty. If we bring it up, all up to the top, there you go. You're bringing in all of that kind of high order harmonic information, which is why when you obviously look at the aliasing, look, as you can see, it increases more aliasing because it's high order harmonics that it's bringing into the signal. Many plugin developers don't include oversampling when they add in so much saturation into compressors. And the fact that you can add that in is fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the benefits of the harmonic section via a vocal kind of parallel compression. Now, I haven't got the harmonics completely cranked, but I've got it enough where I can't remember, I think it's about like 60 odd. So let's have a listen to what that sounds like.
Don't stop me now, I'm having such a good time, I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now, I'm having such a good time, I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now, I'm having such a good time, I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now, I'm having such a good time, I'm having a ball.
Hi everybody, Adam Steele here, and I'm not in my studio as you can see. I'm doing the kind of aid from Hit the Road thing of producing whilst I am literally on the road. I'm going to be doing an interview that you're going to see on the channel very shortly, which I have to keep under wraps for now. So let's dive into the IHNY stuff. So I've got something a little different here. I've got a pretty awesome ska track, but if I hit play on this, the drums, they kind of don't stand out. They don't have that big thing. So what I did is I separated my drums into the closed shell mics and the cymbal mics, room mics, all that kind of stuff as a second channel here. And so the first thing that I want to do is really treat my cymbals. They sound, okay, they sound good. They sound very good. But like I said, in the context of the mix, they don't do anything big. So that's where IHNY2 comes in. This thing has such a nice, easy to use interface compared to the original one, which was cool, but didn't have all this extra stuff. As soon as I turn this on, it's going to sound massive. Now, the first thing you might say is, oh yeah, of course that sounds better. It just sounds louder. But that's what IHNY is doing, is it's keeping everything compressed and chewy and in a level so that when they say a big crash or something like that, it doesn't suddenly get too loud. And the blend of the wet and dry together keeps the dynamics and lets it breathe while still kind of sitting those cymbals in that space that I want them to be, so that they can be heard above those 3 layers of guitars, 13 brass or whatever it is. There's a lot going on. And so I really do like to go with the high aggression on these kind of things with the, you can see me sliding around the aggro. And so if I absolutely kill it, that'll be way too much. As you can see though, I've got the tweak panel up, which is something that I will talk about in more detail on my own channel, but I'll go through a little bit here. Attack and release are to do with how much I'm letting things like the snare hit through. And the release I'm going to leave as is because it's got a nice pleasant kind of whoosh about it without being pumpy and without being too crunchy, which is the fast release. The ratio I've kind of got to 8:1, which went from 12. So let's play with that from brick wall 20 down to 8. And so it seems that this has this auto gain feature as well, where the more you compress with a higher ratio, higher threshold, that kind of thing, the more it brings the level back up. So we are hearing more cymbal as well with that. And then there's the punch control, which starts at 0 and seems to add more of that crumph in. That on its own seems to bring the close mics on the shells out that bit more, which added to the close mics seems to bring the top end and the airiness out there. And now one of my favorite things, the harmonics, because the harmonics, when they're flat as it comes, it's kind of clean. It's really clean. Really aggressively distorted. And so by blending that back in, that really heavily distorted thing can really help things sit in a mix. Might be better on something like a vocal track or something like that because it's really distorted at 100%. There's the shape there, which kind of cleans up the mids. Until TQ, I've darkened it a bit because those hi-hats were really kind of getting a bit much compared to the other cymbals. And then the low and high preserve here, I've kind of preserved the low so we don't get too much pumping, because I'm not a big fan of that squishy pumping. I just like everything that comes around it, especially with like bass drums, that kind of thing. That's when I'm not a big fan of it, especially in a thick mix. But let's hear that. Plus another IHNY2 on the closed mics, which is tiny, doing a little bit. And between them, this should sound great. Did you hear then that after the big crash part, the hi-hats on the side stick part really kind of came up into their own space? That's the IHNY2 really doing that, because that wasn't on the original drums. So that blend there where the compression threshold is starting to lift and the auto gain's bringing it up means that I have a lot less work to do in the mix. And what's better than not having to do more work? Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. It's really great to be able to do this with 3 other people, get 4 completely different perspectives on how to use this, 4 genres, 4 different ways of working, and of course, different DAWs, and even different computers, you know, Apple and PCs. So thanks again to Baby Audio for letting us try it out and also giving us 3 copies to give away. So enter down below. You have 3 chances to win this. And thanks ever so much for watching. So long, farewell, la vie de zay, and au revoir. Adios, goodbye.